Okay, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, dear friends. My name is Goran Milic. For those that don't know me, I'm the director of program of Al Jazeera Balkans, of news, and we'll start with news, answering the W. So where? Hotel Golf Bled, Slovenia. What? Strategic Forum. The European Union and Western Balkans. Who is next? Oh, that's already who. Do we know who is next? Who is next? Is the Minister of Montenegro, who announced his arrival, but he couldn't make it, was here, he would probably smile and say, yes, me. But why not Bosnia and Herzegovina, where the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Zlatko Lagumdžija, is here with us. When? 2020? Before? After? Never? Another W that we don't have the answer. Here we are joined with people knowing other answers about security, like Ambassador Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, Assistant Secretary General for Public Diplomacy. Oh yes, we have many people from this region. Mr. Ilie Meta, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Albania. Welcome. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Kosovo couldn't make it. For His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, who has his government responsibilities in Belgrade, is, I understand, Mr. Marko Đurić, Counselor to the President of the Republic of Serbia, Tomislav Nikolić. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Macedonia, Mr. Nikola Popovski, a good pronunciation, Popovski, not Popovski, Popovski. And someone who will tell us, and I expect him to tell us, is the European Union today more generous than it used to be 10 years ago, or, unfortunately for the candidates, more restrictive? Mr. Ivo Weigl, the member of the European Parliament, will know about that. And we have, did I mention everyone? Yes. And we have someone, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for European and Euro-Asian Affairs. Nowadays, you don't ask Americans many questions. I'll give him the floor, so without asking anything, Mr. Philip Ricker. And an idea of the keynote speech, someone who will tell us how, but open the questions that will follow, is Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Vesna Pusic. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Goran. Hello, dear friends, colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here. I want to thank my colleague Kaza Liavec for organizing yet another really interesting platform. And of course, we are in some ways facing a question which we've been debating over the last 2 decades in different fora and in different forms. And this is the future of our region that we call Southeast Europe, Western Balkans, the Balkans, former Yugoslavia plus Albania, different names, but basically it's this segment of Europe which is most definitely Europe, but still has to become the European Union. And if I may, I will not make a keynote speech as announced because I saw everybody getting a little bit apprehensive and frightened. So I will not bore you with a long speech. I will try to maybe point out some of the topics or some of the questions that we need to answer and that are in a way, I think, summarize the whole concept and the whole political agenda of this region of Southeastern Europe in the years to come, in the decades to come, probably. Although the title of this panel is After Croatia, Who? I think the question that we most often encounter is a different question or a different dilemma. And this is Croatia the last country to join the European Union for a considerable time to come? So, let's say for a long time to come, that just managed to squeeze itself in, and now there'll be a long break and we'll see what happens? Or is the case of Croatia the proof that countries of the Western Balkans or countries of Southeastern Europe actually have a realistic chance, that for countries of Southeastern Europe, this is a doable task. This is something that we can actually do. And the fact that Croatia managed to get there is yet another proof after Slovenia that the countries of this region can actually achieve this goal. I think this is the question that's most often on people's minds and that we need to answer. And I think we cannot answer it by just saying it's either this or that. I think it is, the answer is actually the project. You decide what you want to do, and this is the answer. I think I would like to also ask, I think I have here 6 follow-up questions to this one, but these are follow-up only because they're smaller in scope than the first fundamental one, but in some ways the answer to these questions is the precondition to answering the first, what I see as the key question. The first of these follow-up questions is, what is the objective, or what were the objectives of the EU enlargement policy? And I would say there were at least 3. One was political stability, which was particularly important for the new members. The other was expanding the common market, which was particularly important for the old members. And the third one was uniting and strengthening Europe. This was particularly important for the Euro enthusiasts or Euro aficionados. I would say I count myself into this group. The second question is, who gained what in the process? The old members definitely gained, while the times were good, gained a much broader market. The new members definitely gained more political stability and security. But is Europe more united today, and is it stronger? We'll leave this question open. The third question is, when we look back at the EU enlargement policy today, do we see it as a success or failure? There are different answers, and I'm aware of the fact that there are different answers to this question. But I must say that any which way I look at it, I can only see it as success. And as a success in terms of, the successes of humanity, not only successes of this one project, the success in the sense of bringing together something that was broken after the Second World War in a way in which nobody thought that in their lifetime they would see it glued together again. So in that sense, I think it was actually, it should be seen as a success. The fourth question, European Union, who still wants to join? A few years ago, and certainly 10 years ago, this was a superfluous question. This was a non-existent question. Everybody wants to join. Maybe this is not true anymore. Not everybody who wanted to join 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, wants to join today. But I would say that countries of Southeastern Europe are definitely the ones who do want to join. There are the countries who still do want to join and do want to become members of the European Union. And that I see today, from today's perspective, as an intrinsic value, as a value in itself. The fact that there is sort of support and that there are nations that actually want to become part of that and that want to sort of develop this idea and support these values. Fifth question is joining the countries of the Western Balkans or Southeastern Europe, is this enlargement? Or is it consolidation of the European territory? If you look at the geopolitical map, these countries are surrounded by European territory. And I would argue that the countries of Southeastern Europe are in some ways more consolidation of European territory, and in some way also sort of test to see whether Europe wants to become and is going to become not only a very serious, in spite of all the problems and crises, Europe still is definitely a very serious economic player, but also wants and can and knows how to become a very serious political player. So I would say it's consolidation much more than enlargement. And finally, is EU membership more a strategy for these countries? Is it more a policy? Or is it more a prize? Is it something that, you know, if you're really very, very good and do very, very much everything what you're told, at the end you get to become a member? I would say that, looking from our experience and our perspective, it has to be a domestic strategy. It has to be a strategy of the country that decides to join. Those are the follow-up questions. I think by answering the follow-up questions, it would be easier then to answer the key question, the last for a long time, or the first of the pack. The third of the sort of bigger questions is, whose project is it anyway? Is it this enlargement or this joining of Western Balkan countries? Is it an EU project of enlargement or consolidation or whatever? Or is it a project of the countries of the region? Not only the ones who have not joined yet, but also jointly the ones who have and the ones who have not joined. Is it a project or a way of stabilizing the region, long-term stabilizing the region? And the final question, when you join as a country of Southeastern Europe, as the country of Western Balkans, actually I saw a map where until July 1st of this year, the Western Balkans started on Croatia's western borders. And after July 1st of this year, it moved to Croatia's eastern border. In other words, we changed geography by entering the European Union. I don't think that's actually true. I think that to answer the question, when you join the European Union, do you leave the region? I think the answer is no. You are a member of the European Union, but you're also very much a member of this region. It only means that you will have to work a little harder in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Pusic, for this inspiring speech. And if anyone wants to react, to have an additional commentary, perfectly welcome. I think these are very important issues. Let's say, Ambassador Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic, sorry. Stability or reforms, enlargement or consolidation, or how do you see it from NATO point of view?
Well, all of it. And thank you, Goran, and good afternoon to all of you, first and foremost. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it really is great to be here, and I'd like to use the opportunity to thank the host, but also to thank Slovenia for the role that they have been playing in all of this that we're talking about today, particularly for their role of the contact point embassy in Podgorica, in Montenegro, and also their contribution to our missions in Kosovo and in Afghanistan, and of course, Slovenia's contributions to peace and stability everywhere. I'd like to make 3 brief points. First of all, for me, enlargement has been absolutely a very successful policy, both when it comes to NATO and when it comes to the European Union. It has enlarged the area of stability. It has erased the divisions, the borders in Europe. It really has brought down the Iron Curtain. Started with NATO enlargement, but the 2 processes are complementary. Much of the criteria are the same for the membership, but of course criteria for EU membership is much more extensive, and there is much more to do. Nevertheless, again, the processes are complementary, and for me, it's crucial to see all the countries in Southeast Europe, or the Western Balkans, whatever we want to call it, as members of the Euro-Atlantic family, of Euro-Atlantic integrations in the future, but of course based on their own choices, based on their own speed, and based on their own merit. Secondly, for me, the road to membership is equally important as the membership itself. Minister Pusic, my dear friend Vesna, mentioned the attraction of membership that serves probably as one of the best tools that the European Union or NATO has. However, what is important is getting there as well. And we often debate how long it's going to take, how many years will our negotiations take, etc. In my opinion, what all the countries need to concentrate on is the domestic reform, what they're doing, and using the prospect of membership both as an anchor for the reforms, having a clear blueprint of what needs to be done in the different sectors, and also as a catalyst of those reforms, so that achieving the goal of membership serves also as a not justification, but really the end goal that helps to, for the nations to perform the reforms that are first and foremost for the benefit of themselves. And thirdly, the enlargement momentum needs to be maintained. We all talk about enlargement fatigue that has now settled all over Europe, the European continent, or the transatlantic area. NATO maintains its door open. The open door policy was reaffirmed in Chicago as well. But we have also said that just because there is somebody standing in front of that door, the door will not open automatically. I think what is crucial on both sides is to be consistent, coherent, and credible, both in our demands and in what the countries deliver when it comes to the reforms. So there is no complacency on either side. There are no empty promises, but also there is no way of trying to convince oneself that presenting the results of the reform that one thinks one has done and does not correspond to the actual truth or the actual reality will persuade anyone that the country has transformed. Looking at the process, again, the time framework is not that crucial. I think it probably will take years before at least the European Union enlarges. With NATO, it is a little bit different, and we know that there is at least one country standing in line, and once the bilateral problem is resolved, we hope that we will see an enlarged NATO as well, but nobody can talk about the framework right now. What I would like to see is that Croatia is followed by all the countries in the region. And looking at it, every country should look at themselves. It shouldn't be a competition between each other and among each other, but really a competition with oneself in order to achieve the goals of the reforms in different sectors, again, for the benefit of the countries themselves and for the benefit of the populations. So in answering when, who, how long, etc., I don't think that we should be concentrating on the W's. I think we should have to concentrate on the substance, and that obviously speed will be important for some of the countries in order to maintain the public support on both sides, but ultimately the quality of what we get and being prepared once we're at the door of the European Union or NATO is what matters most. Thank you.
Well, Croatia joined the EU 2 months ago. We are 9 here at this panel. 3 of us are Croatians, and only we do speak, nobody else. So we started early to give lessons. So please, Zlatko Lagumčas, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina, your opinion on the agenda exposed by Ms. Pusic.
Well, thank you very
much.
Microphone, right. Thank you. I said to Phil, I mean, it was not fair. I mean, because previous speakers were, I mean, competing with a dark screen behind them, and we have to compete with a beautiful view. So, but honestly speaking, I mean, this was really a great introduction, and I enjoyed every word of it. Following Kolinda, and after a keynote speak of my dear friend Professor Pusic, the first Deputy Prime Minister of Republic of Croatia and Foreign Minister, and following actually advice from Alex from lunch, when he said always get 3 points, which Kolinda precisely followed, I'll just give 3 points, of course, because I'm third after Goran was calling us. First point, right? The answer is we. Who are we? Well, that's debatable, but probably all of us. So the answer is we. When? Because Goran asked me very many times, every time when I see him, he asks me, are you optimist or not, and so on. So as a born optimist, as optimist by heart and by brain, as optimist because I think there is simply, it's not practical not to be optimist, after all, the last line. As an optimist, I think if we do what we have to do in near future, if we do consolidate ourselves in 2014, if we use 2014 as a powerful year, because of year that is symbolically, and this part of the world symbolism also counts, if we use 2014 as a year in which we will try to show that we crossed the Rubicon, that we are really on a reversible path to, not to the Holy Land, but to the real project, which is called European Union, bigger one than the current one. So if we do use 2014, if we do really do homework, I think that we have to go for 2020, because we will get faster if we go for some year that doesn't look like you have European perspective. Because I heard so many times that we have European perspective, and more times I heard that we have European perspective, less was talking about dates. I was very happy when Croatia got in because of a variety of reasons. One of the reasons, selfish reason, is because it's much nicer from Bosnian perspective to have EU on the border than to have EU perspective. So that's the reason why I think that on second point, when, do something in 2013, use 2014 and go for 2020. Then the answer when is sooner will be when, if we use these 3 deadlines. How? Obviously, the best answer is somehow. That's the best answer, encapsulated answer, because we have to be creative, we have to improvise, but we have to do homework. We have to be standard, we have to be really working hard. We have to be working systematically, but in the end, the bottom line is somehow. What are the tools for somehow? The tools for somehow is, as far as I'm talking from Bosnian perspective, first tool is NATO. Second tool is European Union. And the third tool is regional cooperation. Consolidated regional cooperation, which Goran Svilanovic, my old friend, and I talked a lot today, that we have to consolidate all these things, because I don't remember everything, but I remember a lot. I remember a few lives, because in 20 years in politics, I've survived few lives. And I really do remember a lot. There has never been better political overall aura in this part of the missing EU world than it is today. I think, I mean, of course, maybe someone has a little bit more problems, or we have some problems that we think that are necessary, but basically speaking, when you look at internal dynamics the last 20 years in this region among these different countries, republics, states, whatever, entities, the situation has been better, never been better than today. So those three tools, NATO, EU, and regional cooperation, at the same time are our goals, of course. But that's the part of the concrete answer on a very precise answer called somehow. That somehow is do homework, do homework, do homework, and be creative, be brave. Be as creative and have a courage like our dear friends in Belgrade and in Pristina, and we all salute them for the creativity and courage that they show. Speaking about creativity and courage, I think that part of that somehow is actually, since those famous C's that we follow from 2006, as far as I can remember, about European enlargement, it's conditionality, it's consolidation of existing EU, and the third one is communication to the citizens. Those three C's, I think, have to be added with this courage and creativity. Compared to as alternative to courage and creativity, we have confusion and complacency. And I think that we have to fight against confusion and complacency that is following us a lot. So since there's been always a lot of confusion and complacency, I mean, that's something that we know how to fight. We are used on it. And we have to turn the page in a different C's, those three C's that we have to do, because after all, that's where the rules are. And those creativity and courage that people from the region have to show. People from the region have to show, and I'll close down with what I heard many times today from a lot of people, from Finland to Phil, to everyone, I mean, in here. After all, there is no better project for all of us, for EU countries and non-EU countries. There is no better project today than EU. EU, which Martians would think that it's EU, because when they would come and they would take a look, they said there's someplace European Union, they would probably not make the map of European Union that it is today. That map would be with us together as well. So it looks like for this part of the world, broader Europe, there is no better project than European Union on economic, social, political, whatever layer you want to put. And there should be some kind of fuel and driving force. Every time when we get a little bit less optimistic, then we should go back to square one. Just use common sense. Nothing is more practical than European Union follow us at this moment as our near future.
Thank you. Here we have, I mean, they advised me, the organizer, to have a contact with the public, questions and answers, it will come. But I see in the public the High Representative, Mr. Valentinisco. Just wonder, lift your hand if it's true, don't say anything if it's wrong. Do they speak like that in Bosnia and Herzegovina in such a, back home, in such a devoted and simple and, I would say, optimistic manner? Yeah,
you raised your hand.
Yeah, you have history as well, and you remember a long time. So, do they speak? Huh?
Every time they meet foreigners.
That's a curious thing. Now, how do you explain? I mean, how can you explain that? I mean, you are all brilliant speaking to foreigners. Especially Mr. Ricker would be absolutely enthusiastic.
No, but we are not all the same.
Huh?
We are not all the same.
No, I agree. But there is that tendency.
There is tendency to call us all the same, but if you're calling us all the same, you're interfering into local politics. Because if we're all the same, that's technically not the truth. Statistically, it's not the truth. So we are not all the same. And that's the reason why some of us speak differently locally and otherwise, right? It makes sense.
For the Ambassador Ricker, for the global security, for the security of the Western Balkans, of the region. Now it's very hypothetical, but would it be better for countries to join the Euro-Atlantic integrations one by one, or in groups of 2 or 3, or all together?
Well, thanks, Goran. I mean, I served for almost 5 years as a spokesman at the State Department, and the #1 rule was don't answer hypotheticals. And the Balkans spends far too long and far too much time on hypotheticals. I think that question is frankly irrelevant. Let me start by recognizing and thanking our Slovenian hosts, Mr. Erjevec, President Pahor. The United States is deeply grateful for the role Slovenia, as a partner and an ally, plays in this broader region. And I'm delighted that I could represent the State Department and Secretary Kerry here at this important forum, because these are important topics. And I think this forum, with this incredible backdrop, gives us a good opportunity to take stock of some of these things. It's too easy back in the countries of the Balkans, particularly in Zlatkos, to sort of drown in the pool of pessimism in which so many people are marinating all the time. This, I think, should inspire us, and particularly what our good friend Minister Pusic has said. And I think Slovenia can, in many ways, inspire us as well. I think what President Pahor does with the Brdo process, with this forum, with Slovenia's participation in KFOR, has been extremely important to the region and promoting the broad degree of stability that we see, certainly compared to 20 years ago. In terms of the question, who is next? In just over 2 years in this job, I have traveled across the Atlantic so many times to Brussels, more than 24 times, that one of my EU colleagues quipped, we ought to give Riker membership in the EU. But I am not next, nor is the United States, even though I say very often in the region that more EU does not mean less United States. US policy has been consistent over a variety of governments, administrations from both sides of our political spectrum, focused on achieving a Europe whole, free, at peace, democratic, and increasingly prosperous. And the Euro-Atlantic integration of the Balkans is essential to that effort. I think that is repeated not only by our president, but by Secretary Kerry on a regular basis. And it's been a shared value and a clear policy goal, an objective of our administrations for more than 20 years. In some ways, if you look back to 1945, 1944, that was the original goal. And I'm so glad Kalinda's here to remind us of NATO and the role that it plays in this integration as well. We are united with our European partners in this goal to ensure stable and prosperous, peaceful relationships in the Balkans. And I think it's worth remembering that just under a year ago, we had an unprecedented visit to the region of the US Secretary of State, accompanied by the European Union High Representative, traveling to Bosnia and Herzegovina, to Belgrade, and to Pristina. A clear demonstration of the very closely coordinated, shared commitment that the United States and the EU have to supporting the Balkan states in realizing their European aspirations. And as I said, underscoring that, at the instructions of the Secretary of State, now Secretary Kerry, I've made some 24 trips on a very regular basis to Brussels and, of course, throughout the region to demonstrate the engagement, the commitment of the United States, the frustration that we often feel, our commitment and solidarity with the peoples of the region who deserve to achieve the goals and visions that we've described. And that has not changed. That remains very much key, even as the headlines and, of course, the attentions of the Secretary of State and others have to be directed beyond this region, which reminds us that this region is just part of Europe, and there is a much larger world out there. I think we continue to see the integration process as the primary development tool and motivator to build stronger, democratic, more prosperous societies throughout the region. I would point out that our development aid, even in this era of budget realities, remains, over the last 2 years, some $315 million for the Western Balkan region, supporting countries in pursuing their EU aspirations, working to establish the SAA relationships and implementing those SAAs, and to carry out, when ready, EU accession negotiations. We have embassies, most of them new, in all the countries of the region, and I was reminding some colleagues earlier today that our embassy in Bosnia-Herzegovina is the 8th largest US embassy in Europe. So after London, Paris, Moscow, Ankara, you can guess the other obvious major embassies, Berlin, Rome, Brussels, of course. There in Sarajevo, we have dedicated professionals who are trying to engage with all the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina to realize greater stability and a greater opportunity that lays ahead. So the answer, again, I think, or the question rather than who is next, perhaps should focus on who will be last. Because our vision and our firm belief is that all of these countries, all of the countries in the Western Balkans will be integrated into the Euro-Atlantic family. It will take time, as it's demonstrated. When and exactly who is going to be up to them, to their leadership, but also to their citizens and what they demand of their leaders. These are all democracies with different levels, different challenges in that realm, but they can hold their leaders accountable in the functioning of governance and the moving forward on the paths that they choose. I think all of the countries of the region should be focusing on how they can marshal the commitments, the compromises, and the dedication necessary to make this difficult task. Croatia knows it perhaps best and most recently. Successive governments in Croatia stuck to an overarching goal over a period of many years, committing resources, personnel, reforms, and they ultimately achieved that goal this past July 1st. And as Secretary Kerry said before he dispatched me to Zagreb to join in that celebration, he said, "We're really thrilled to witness this, and this proves that this is indeed possible. It is the reality. It is the goal." And so, again, congratulations on that. And I think it's great to see Zagreb, with our full support, sharing their lessons, their experiences with other countries of the region. It's been important, I think, to good rapprochement, good relations between Serbia and Croatia. The support you can provide in Bosnia is terrific. Montenegro is going through the succession process now. All of this is key, and all of this is supported by the United States. So I think whether countries join in groups, individually, they will join when they are ready and when they've made the commitment and taken the difficult but dedicated steps to doing this. In that, they will have the support of the United States, for better and for worse, in achieving what are their goals. And I do think that our friends in Serbia and in Kosovo have demonstrated the ability to take difficult decisions, to adjust narratives, to focus on something beyond the short term, something beyond the status quo. And that's making a real difference, I think, in how both Serbia and Kosovo are engaging with the rest of the region, with the rest of Europe, and indeed transatlantically. I had the opportunity with Marco over these last 6 months to talk about U.S.-Serbia relations and the things that we can focus on, just as I spent time with our Kosovo colleagues, and I'm sorry Enver couldn't be here today, in looking at the opportunities ahead, but also the hard work that they need to do in consolidating a democracy there. So that's a long way of saying I don't think we should be asking questions that aren't important. As I say to my friends in the region who are on this course, on this path, don't get caught up in the things that don't matter. And you know, there's so many things. If you look at the past 6 months, the dramas of the dialogue process and implementation of that, normalization, things that were headlines that were keeping many of us up late at night, that are simply forgotten already. And that's where leaders are focusing more on what really matters, what improves their stability, their security, how we can work together toward a common set of values while maintaining individual identities, because, again, as Vesna pointed out, geography does not change. History cannot change. It can be used as a guide for how we want to shape the future. And I do think we all need to be thinking about that as we approach 2014 and this important centennial of what were events beginning in 1914 that fundamentally, of course, changed the world in which we live, particularly in this broader region. And let's hope that we can learn from that past and have a stronger future where everyone is next, everyone is a part of a Euro-Atlantic family, participating in the institutions that they choose to participate in and for which they do the difficult homework that Zlatko suggests. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador Riker. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Ili Rumeta, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Albania. I mean, all of us, except the American ambassador, we remember time living in former Yugoslavia. We are from these countries. You are from Albania. How do you perceive us? I mean, do you see us as a group when you say Western Balkans, that's them and Albania separately? Or you think that you are part of that process? Do you have your specific agenda because you're Albania, we don't speak a similar language as we have a different history and so on? Or you are a part of Western Balkans and you are on the same path like we are?
Thank you very much for your interesting question. It's not a question of the language, it's a question of the vocation for us. And we are Europeans from the very beginning, despite of the history, which has been very tragic for our country and for our nation. And we do not have any specific agenda. We have only one agenda, which is Albania, after becoming a NATO member, to become member of the European Union, because it's not just it's not a matter only of the better standards for our people, but first of all, I think it's a matter of realizing a long aspiration for our country, which has been the most isolated. You remember Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia for us was unthinkable to be visited. Even Kosovo, which was part of Yugoslavia at the time. We were, unfortunately, like a North Korea of Europe 23 years ago. And now, Albania is completely different, despite of the fact that we are not happy with the progress because we want to go faster also to EU integration. I think that the basic question about the relations between EU and the Western Balkans is if Europe is stronger, is safer, and more credible by having Western Balkans part of it, or is not. And I think that if we go back 100 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the answer is very clear. So this is the only way to go ahead towards keeping the pledge of the EU 10 years ago at the Thessaloniki summit to Western Balkan countries. It's true that in the last 10 years only Croatia could succeed and is now a member of the European Union. But anyway, this is good news because it means that the process is working. It means that we have a good example to be followed. And if Croatia is a member of EU, I think it happens because it deserves. It has done huge efforts. If we are not getting yet the candidate status as Albania, unfortunately it is because of we were not enough capable to build the right bridges between the majority and the opposition in the last 3 years, because we could get it earlier. But I'm optimistic that after the last general elections were a success story for the countries, for our country, we are going to gain the time that we wasted, and hopefully soon also Albania will get the candidate status. Also other countries in the Western Balkans were having progress from Thessaloniki to now, and we wish everyone to join to EU because I think this is fundamental for the whole region. The main question, the most important question is not who is the first, who is the last. I think it's fundamental that all the countries of the Western Balkans to become part of the European Union. Of course, everyone would like to join as soon as possible, but we know that we should meet the established criteria. It should continue based on individual merits, but also we know very well that regional cooperation is a precondition for all of us. And that's the reason that we strongly support this dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade, and we wish for a faster implementation of the agreements because it helps the whole image of our region. We know that European integration is not a goal in itself. We want to reach better standards and prosperity for our people. And we know that each of our countries represents a small market. And we should work to further develop a regional market for energy, to accelerate such strategic projects like a Trans-Adriatic pipeline or Ionian-Adriatic project, which are fundamental for the whole region and which make very attractive our region as a market of 20 million people, no matter of Albanians or Macedonians, Serbs, Kosovo or Montenegro. So I think that we have a lot to do. We should continue to work with each other. We should continue to work with the European Union. We should continue to work with the United States because I think if Croatia is now a successful member of the European Union, it is because it was very successful. It was very helpful. Croatia joined the and in this trade, we are looking forward to enhance
Albania. We were dedicated to this project, and it was great that one movement in Albania, which was founded based on nationalism, and did the best to succeed, got 0 seats in this parliament. And this is a strong signal that Albanian citizens have only one project, which has to do with realizing the aspiration of Albania to join the European Union. I want also to add something else. It was, as you know, EU was enlarged a lot, we see that often there is confusion and some people try to create the idea that some of the problems come from the new EU member countries. I think that this crisis that also the EU is facing, and which is also a global one, has not to do with our countries. Also, if we take the specific cases, we know that this crisis in Greece, which is not in the Union, has not to do with countries, or the difficult financial situation of Spain, which is not also a new country, etc. But this challenges EU is should oblige us to do better our homework in order to draw the right attention and to deserve a faster EU integration for our countries. Thank you.
Minister Nikola Popovsky. Well, your problem is your neighborhood, or maybe you are a problem for your neighbors. But before you solve the problem, you are aware that not the European Union will solve your problem. You should solve the problem before entering the European Union. In Macedonia, how do you feel about that? I mean, do you think it's unfair, just?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think that we've been through this phase of making evaluations on the basis of whether something is just or not. And I think that the conclusion in overall is that we need to focus on what is feasible and what is going to allow us to achieve final objective. I got worried a little bit earlier because with each one of the speakers intervening, I had the impression that they were reading into my notes. But then the economist spoke inside of me, and I tried to look at it on the positive side by saying, well, we're just like-minded people. So it makes sense that we had the same analysis of the thing. Zlatko mentioned the key questions on how do we perceive. I think that from Macedonian perspective, we enjoy the advantage of being the most experienced non-negotiating candidate country. That means have acquired a lot of observation powers, and our analysis on answering this key journalist question on who, why, how, etc. would be close to what one would expect if you put it at the most rational basis. I think that the first question on who would indicate that all of us together in the Western Balkans. Why? Because we have time. It seems appetite appears to have decreased in recent times. We are a small portion of land. If you look at it from economic perspective, the entire Southeast Europe is the size of Belgium in GDP terms. So it's a piece of cake in terms of absorption capacity. And it will also avoid interblocking, something that, looking at it from a Macedonian perspective, we have acquired certain expertise, meaning avoiding blockages on different roads that we have taken, especially on NATO and EU. That is the why. On the how side, I think that we should remember what Europe is about. It is, at the first place, a peace process, and there I will join the estimation of our friend Philip, saying that this is a peace project that has no alternative, I would say, and where none of us would be successful in completing it without the assistance of the United States. I would also underline that there are changing conditions, and when we come to the conditions, I think that we have to admit that there will be more conditionalities for all of us guys that are waiting in the line, that there will be less money in relative terms, and there will be less hard money, hard funding, which means infrastructure, etc., while the needs will be increasing. So we will face higher challenges with maybe less resources, but still being able to deliver on these objectives. It comes to the explanation on when is this going to happen, and there I was stuck. I didn't have any answers on that, and fortunately at the last page of my notebook I have a saying of a former state secretary who says, there is no secret to success. It is a result of a good preparation, hard working, and learning from mistakes. I think learning from mistakes is the most relevant bit, and I think that from the European Union context, none of us will afford to repeat the same mistakes from the past, and most likely the parameters that I mentioned in terms of conditionalities will apply in order to avoid the same mistakes to be repeated. What to do about it? In the Balkans, we are quite known for insisting on something. We have a term that probably all of us understand, which is inat. I've tried many times to look for an English translation. Maybe stubbornness is the closest one, but it doesn't explain really what inat means. Now, probably we need to change the approach and to focus on the second best thing that we do, and that is peer pressure. This is why I think that we can all be successful on this road. And maybe trying to behave in a manner of a member state would help. Being selective on that approach and sticking to the good examples on member states' behavior. Encourage cooperation across the borders will definitely help. And focus on what really matters. And what really matters, if you look from economics perspective, is predictability. We can only improve that by insisting on rule of law, on trying to create a business-friendly environment, and trying to encourage a healthy competition. I think we should not lose any time on looking into our crystal balls and predicting when is it going to happen, but rather to spend our energy on the bullet points that I mentioned, because we need to spend time anyways, and more we spend the time on things that really matter, easier it will be in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Popovski. I regret that Mr. Ivan Mrkic, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, could not come here. Imagine a coincidence. In the 80s, in Manhattan, you live in the same building, and I lived with Ivan Mrkic for 4 years. And I don't see him for the last 20, so it was an opportunity. But thank you, Mr. Marko Đurić, Counselor to the President of the Republic of Serbia. We've heard Minister Popovski. He said, I'm not talking in terms of justice or not justice, I'm pragmatic. Is there something that happened with the new government in Serbia and the negotiations that were underway with Kosovo and with Catherine Ashton and the approachment to the European Union that changed this Serbian approach? Justice and injustice first in the rhetorics and pragmatism second. Do we just feel that do you look just more, or you really became more pragmatic? And that's why you have this appraisal of the European Union, and you got very good notes.
Thank you very much, Goran, and first of all, I would like to thank all of my esteemed colleagues, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to also thank my dear Slovenian colleagues for hosting this extraordinary event, which gives us an opportunity to discuss matters which are of substantial importance for all of us here. Well, addressing your question first, I must say that the process of dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina has been a learning process for both Belgrade, Pristina, and the European Union, I think, and the US, as Phil says. I think that this process has made us deal with issues in such a strategic way which was unknown to the political elites in Serbia, at least, to speak in all honesty. And in doing so, our organizational, logistical, all of our structures were put to the ultimate test. But the result was and is positive and is opening doors and paving the way for European integration of the entire Western Balkans, or the part of the Western Balkans which remains outside of the European Union. And speaking in this context, I believe that there really is reason for optimism when it comes to the European integration of the remaining part of the Western Balkans region, because precisely of the reason that the political elites of all of the remaining non-EU countries have the awareness that the profound interest of each and every individual remaining country is to join the European Union. And since we've heard some excellent analysis from my esteemed colleagues, some of whom are veterans of regional politics and cooperation, I will just try to, in a couple of words, focus on what I believe are the practical steps that we need to make in order to speed up and make our path more efficient from what we've noticed in our work, both when it comes to the dialogue with Pristina and other matters. First of all, I believe that we need to combine forces and unite in fighting enlargement fatigue. And this exercise should include both the countries that have joined the EU and the countries that are still in the line for joining EU. We have had a number of useful sessions like this, a number of very successful summits recently, including the Brdo Summit, in which we discussed the idea of formulating political projects which would serve as an exercise for politicians and countries from the region in working together, so as to persuade the wider international community that we are capable of cooperating in the spirit on which the European Union is itself based. The second very important thing would be to stop using the process of European integration for resolving unresolved bilateral issues. I think that such approach still is present in the minds of a number of politicians in our region, and even beyond our region. Even some old EU member states from time to time show tendency to use the European integration process as a tool for achieving their bilateral goals. So I think that in parallel with persuading them to let us in, we need to work with them and to show that as a region we have grown mature to be able to participate in the European political, economic, and why not security process. And in that context, I want to mention also the role of the United States, who have been very much involved in the events in this region, and to also mention the need to help us in fighting this enlargement fatigue which is present among the EU states. Because when you look at the wider geopolitical picture, there is no stable and strong Europe without this entire region being included, and there is no secure Europe without our region being included in such a Europe, and this also, I believe, is a part of the interests of the United States and part of your foreign policy. So I believe that we really have all of the preconditions except maybe psychological in some small pockets to move much faster than we are moving now. I believe that the months that lay in front of us will bring new opportunities to unite in concrete political and economic projects, and I believe that this is the only right path for all of us to go forward. I hope that what we are doing in our dialogue with Pristina is serving, without wanting to sound pretentious, is serving as an example as to how cooperation can be established. And I really hope that highways, pipelines, all sorts of political and economic projects will be following this good atmosphere that we are struggling so hard to create. So thank you very much.
Imagine a tough journalist, not being exactly but the truth, but he could put a title. An advisor to the Serbian president told the American diplomat, Serbia ready for NATO. That's something that I'm sure.
Serbia is a country which is debating its policies all the time, and we are open-minded when it comes to all relevant matters, but when it comes to our national security, we are talking and cooperating closely to all of our partners in the international community.
Talking about security, let's forget Kosovo. Talking about security, let's forget Kosovo for a moment because we'll never end. But do everyone here agree that the architecture of the Balkans, Western Balkans, is definitely established, that nobody has territorial pretensions, idea of somehow exchange of territory, a greater Albania, smaller Serbia, bigger Croatia, whatever. Is that over? Because that's something that, yes, in public discussion it's over. But there is always some stories, and knowing the history of the Balkans, you always have that. Is this definitely over from the NATO point of view, from your knowledge, from your information?
Well, let me first comment on your question previously about possibility of Serbia's membership in NATO. For NATO, Serbia is a very valuable partner. So we hope we will continue our dialogue one way or another. As I said, you know, my personal opinion, and I am here as NATO Assistant Secretary General, but I also cannot escape the fact that I am Croatian and that I've been through this process of Euro-Atlantic integration on the other side as well. So I hope that all countries in the Western Balkans will be integrated in the Euro-Atlantic institutions one day. As far as the threats go, you know, history has shown that unfortunately you can never be complacent. I hope that times of regional troubles and conflicts are behind us. And that's why I think we're precisely the importance of NATO and the European Union, and when it comes to security dialogue, especially NATO comes in. We have the North Atlantic Council, but also our partnerships with many countries, Partnership for Peace, individual partnerships with Russia, with Ukraine, Georgia, and many others, where we discuss many issues of mutual importance. And I believe that this dialogue around that round table, having NATO, for instance, as that podium to discuss issues, to discuss potential problems before their flare-up is very important. And that is the importance of dialogue that comes in. And secondly, what in my opinion is one of the crucial tenets of NATO, and that is solidarity, will also help very much to security and understanding of everyone in the region, is solidarity in terms of supporting each other and transferring the knowledge that has been gained in one process or another. And you know, here I'd like to commend my own country, Croatia, for sharing the knowledge and the experience from this Euro-Atlantic process and helping others to avoid the mistakes that we perhaps have made. And we had benefited from the experience of other countries as well. but solidarity also in assisting each other in times of natural disasters, for instance, in working in cross-border cooperation to combat the modern and asymmetric security threats. And today, yes, we have a distant possibility of conventional conflicts, but there are many other threats that we will have to face together more vigorously. Not just international terrorism, but really trafficking in arms, proliferation, drug trafficking as well, trafficking in human beings as well. And here is where security should be looked at, not just in terms of the absence of an armed conflict, but really in terms of achieving the human security and enforcing the rights of everyone. That regional cooperation, but also being very mindful of what is happening around us and being really responsible citizens in noticing these new security threats, where I believe that the role of each and individual citizen will be increasingly important, more so than state cooperation. And this is where I see the way forward when we discuss security. Let's not just talk in terms of borders or boundaries, because yes, they will remain, but they will be less important. Yes, and but on the other hand, the fact that they are less important also encourages permeation of different threats, which is something that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So it really is a very a large topic that can be debated. I believe in the future of Southeast Europe. I believe that we will never again see the kind of armed conflicts that we have seen in the past, but unfortunately, that cannot be just taken for granted. We all have to work actively towards ensuring for that kind of future.
Would NATO consider a problem if someone in the Balkans tried to start a separation process, start to somehow protect his population in different countries? Would that be an issue for NATO?
Well, as you know, NATO is an alliance of 28 sovereign member countries, and the first and foremost, our purpose is the defense of our territories and of our population and assets, of course. So Article 5 remains the basic tenet. It would, I think, very much depend on how our member states, Croatia and Albania in this case, and perhaps some others in the region, would perceive the developments in the neighboring countries as being threats to the security of our member states and of NATO as such, and would definitely, I believe, bring that those issues to the common table under Article 4, which provides for consultations.
Okay. Yes. And finally from our participants, Mr. Ivo Weigl. He's a decision maker. He's a member of the European Parliament, and he can tell us firsthand that. Are you today, with budget, with extended hand, more generous today than 10, 12 years ago when you Slovenians and others were joining the European Union? Is it easier to enter today or 10, 12 years ago? And the future, according to your experience and your knowledge, will the enlargement in the future be easier? Let's say, forget about the economic crisis, forget about the mentality with the economic crisis, but let's say the economic crisis is behind us. Will it be easier or more difficult than even today? Of course, it's hard to guess, but I mean, who knows better than you?
It will be less money. I have no doubt about it. But it will be still enough to make European Union interesting, to make European Union helpful and prosperous for every candidate country and every country who wants to join European Union. I have no doubt about it. There are a lot of possibilities to experience what European Union can offer. And if you, sometimes I'm arguing in Slovenia with Eurosceptical. We have Eurosceptical also here. And I am asking them if they are taking sometimes a journey through Slovenia, taking the old, not highway, but a simple road. And if they realize that there is practically no small town, no village, where there wouldn't be at least one project built, one school, one stadium, street, object of common use, which was built with the participation of European funds. So it is simply, it works like that. And it works also for the candidates in the pre-accession phases. And I think if you went to, if whoever was in Croatia in this summer, the same experience I made. There was a lot of things which were realized in Croatia with European help. It is just a question of how skillful, how able the people are, institutions are, government is, to make the use of European funds more efficient. So I don't think that economic crisis or rather grim prospect of economic development of European space at large will be, or might be, or should be the reason for being skeptical about European future. But as everybody had its small agenda, what I want to say, I also have some thoughts which I would like to say. And I wanted to ask the question, if there would be a panel like this in 150 years from now, sitting here in Bled, and discussing what happened in Europe in the 19th from another millennium, they would probably ask, why did European Union make a mistake, and why didn't Europe apply after the fall of communism the same recipe as Europe did after the World War II, to include all the countries of the European continent in European Union, under the umbrella of European Union. We know the stories about guys like Milosevic and some other guys on the other sides, in other republics of former Yugoslavia, etc., etc. But from the prospect of 150 years from now, it will be irrelevant. It will be just a huge strategic mistake. And we are now trying to repair slowly this mistake. And listening today to the debate, I came across to an idea which I actually didn't have in my agenda. Why shouldn't we think about another big bang of enlargement of European Union? Why is it not an option? Because the differences among the candidate countries from the Western Balkans, including, of course, Albania, are not so big that it should not be leveled before such a big bang could be possible. I can remember well, I was at that time State Secretary in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, when the big European debate took place about which country should be eligible as first to join European Union. So some of our German friends were saying us, it will be you. And also it would be you because you were not satisfied by not being taken into the NATO in '97. So it will be you. And then it was the idea, it will be you and Estonians, only two of them. And then it was the idea, aha, you, Estonians, and maybe Czech Republic. And then the idea developed in about 1 year maybe, to the point that there was a big bang. And I am sure that nobody regretted this strategic idea, this courageous idea, not to look into the details and into the small differences, but make a strategic move. So this is my idea for today discussion. I would like to react on one position which was expressed today about the open questions. I think it's very important that the countries we are talking about Western Balkans, solve their open bilateral issues before they become one issue for which would mean repeating of the story between Slovenia and Croatia. It should not be repeated anymore. So, but there are often open issues, everybody knows, border issues, and it shouldn't be underestimated. These are important issues. If we are talking between two states about one tree, is it mine or is it yours, then it is bilateral question and it is an open issue. So this is very important. It should not be manipulated, this problem. And then I will finish by saying, of course, Western Balkans country and Southeastern European countries should be self-confident, added value to the European Union, altogether, as a region. Because the most important, the most dangerous problems of Europe are from and in our broader neighborhood, in our closer neighborhood, Middle East, and Central and Asia and North Africa. We should be somebody who can help add the dynamics to the European politics and understanding of the so-called frozen problems. We have our own experience. We have been a frozen problem. The former Yugoslavia was actually a frozen problem from the very, very beginning. And it exploded. Goran and myself, we were in Belgrade at that time when everything was coming and we knew how it's going to end. So I think if we want efficient European politics with regard on our neighborhood, actually we need the expertise, the knowledge and experience of Southeastern Europe. And we should be self-confident. We should offer our knowledge, our experience. And that's where I will finish.
Proud to be from the Balkans. Good. Can we organize this for a few minutes?
We can do it. We can do 15 minutes.
Fine. So questions from the audience, please, before the participants make their final remarks. Yes. Go ahead.
Sorry, I got a bit hot by those last comments. My question, this is really has to do also with the enlargement fatigue that there is among European voters. Now, I appreciate all the optimism, and I completely understand why the Americans and NATO are so in favor of all this enlargement, but these decisions have to be taken by the current members of the European Union. And many of them and many of their voters are actually regretting some of the recent enlargements we've had. So my question to you is, what are you going to do to ensure there is actual public support for your membership? Because if we don't have that, then this is all just a dream, a wonderful dream. I think it should happen. But if we don't want it to happen decades from now, then we really need to work on this public support.
The question is to whom?
Well, I would say to everyone, but I don't know if they can do it in 1 minute each. But I don't know, let's start with, I would like to ask Mr. Weigel, because he represents the people. Right. And then I think perhaps
the new member?
The Albanian gentleman, because, I mean, they were very optimistic, and I really think there are serious doubts inside the European Union about your accession. I'm just being dead honest here.
Okay. Ivo.
Well, if you ask me, and thank you for asking me first, I'm not so skeptical about the public support in European Union for enlargement. I think that most of the public opinion in European Union still consider enlargement as an important part of the Europe as a peace project. I recall here what President Fischer yesterday said. I tweeted it then later. You know, that the fact that the peace is so important. We did not forget the peace. The youngster also not, because there's enough war around us, and unfortunately there are people who still think that the war is the best way to solve a problem. You know, so I think that I'm not so skeptical. I don't think that propaganda activity should be undertaken in order to save the enlargement process, but it should be continuous and serious and well-argumented debate about the need and the importance of enlargement. Thank you.
Next. You wanted to comment on this? Yes.
Jeff from Skopje. I belong to the Macedonian circles. And many of us in these circles appreciate very much the recent economic performance. So, economy, re-establishment of the political dialogue and so on and so on. However, what the Minister Popovsky said, that Macedonia is the country with most experience as a non-negotiated candidate for the EU. The question is directly to Minister Popovsky. What if Macedonia continued this experience of non-negotiating for a longer time? Do Macedonian authorities working on an alternative strategy? It may continue for long decades. Of course, the population is aware that there is no other. It's not fair and democratic to tell the population you don't have other alternative. European Union is your destiny. It's just like to say to the population, the paradise is your destiny. And you just wait for that. Thank you.
Minister?
Well, to start where you finished, I don't think that anybody has any illusions about European Union being a paradise where you simply solve or you delegate to someone else to solve your problems. I would align with the statement of the Dutch lady that earlier mentioned that we have a public support a challenge that we need to handle. I would say on the side of alternatives that what we need to focus really are the 3 points that I mentioned previously. We desperately need economic development in the Balkans. That requires predictability. This is why NATO membership is important. And I think that spending our time on rule of law, business-friendly environment, healthy competition are the things that we really need to work on. On the public support side, I think that more information will be required to the European citizens, because I think that we tend to project stereotypes. Stereotypes are by definition wrong. And the stereotype is that there is a Polish plumber that is going to steal the work of a Dutch plumber, or that there is a bunch of Western Balkans guys that are going to come and simply steal the jobs of Western or Northern European nations, which in practice is definitely false. What happens more frequently, and it will happen even more with the aging of population in Europe, is that you will require qualified people, and that they will be fight for qualified doctors or engineers, etc., who's going to take them. So I think that it is clearly in the interest of the member states, of the current member states of the European Union, that this enlargement happens sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lagunja wanted to reply to the idea of the public support that will be lacking for new members?
Well, I just want to say very briefly that we, of course, as aspirant members, have our reasons to be getting in. But I think that it is really two-way street, that if I was, let's say, member state citizen, I will see as many reasons why this unfinished story, unfinished business, is jeopardizing my future. We can talk about two sets of reasons. One set of reasons is, what are you getting if we get in? From security perspective, from economic perspective, from social perspective, from moral perspective, what Europe Union said that morally it's about. I'm not preaching only for moral values, because we heard about justice and feasibility in here a lot. But that's one set, and that set is a very large one. But we have another large set of arguments for the countries who are now in a waiting list, in a waiting room. What would happen negatively for the current European Union if these countries would be left out? And I think that that scary list is much bigger than a wishful list. And that scary list from security perspective, moral perspective, and geopolitical perspective is even bigger. And after all, since I'm coming from the country that is 4 million people, 3-4 different religious ethnic groups, whatever, I mean, and that's the reason why we are so strong, and that's why all this international effort to keep Bosnia together and keep region in is, that if we as one country, as one society, survived under Ottoman Empire, under Austro-Hungarian Empire, under kingdom, under communism, and if we survived as one society, and when democracy was turned on, as Mr. Weigel was, when light was turned on, when we got democracy, then suddenly someone is telling us that we cannot live in one society, in one country. Then we are coming to the very fundamental problem of the moral values that 21st century is about. So that's the reason why I think that this, my country, and this region in general, collectively, if it is left in a waiting room with some long-term perspective, it is bad for us. But it is not bad only for us. It is bad for everyone who is giving us perspective, but not giving us life today as being part of the much bigger idea than today's EU is. And I think it's argument that is just for the working purposes, even for the seminar, good. And I'm absolutely sure when it comes to that question that, are you going to adopt us or accept us or not? It will be easy question. The tough question is that we are ready for it. Because don't forget that it is possible that if we've been waiting for a long time, we may become Eurosceptics inside. And that can create another different problems, which I don't want even to mention, not open one.
Don't.
No, I won't.
Don't.
I won't.
Such a friendly discussion.
And by the way, I'm saying this at home as well, right?
That last one, yes, definitely. Last question from the public. No more. Please, Vesna.
Alexander Pisev, Russian MFA. Ambassador Ricker just mentioned this, has mentioned this issue, but the answer remains, the question remains unanswered. Who is the last in the EU?
Yeah, it's a lottery. Vesna, you wanted to?
Perhaps Russia.
Russia has a certain claim to being European, where China doesn't. But I just wanted to go back to Luis Visa's question and comment. I think it actually should be, for somebody who is very pro-European, like Luis Visa, I think it's very important to take this question very seriously. because actually the voters, as things stand now, the voters who elect the politicians, who make the decisions in most of the European member states, are actually not going to cry if the countries of this part of the world don't join. Maybe objectively this is not a good thing, or this wouldn't be a good thing, but subjectively, in the perception of the voters on whom these politicians depend, all of us depend to be making any decisions, are not too troubled with this problem. And that's why I think it's extremely important to understand that nobody in the European Union is scared of this region not becoming part of Europe. It is therefore, in my opinion, extremely important to understand that it has to be, in order to succeed, it has to be a joint project. We have to create sort of a positive attitude and positive critical mass of positive opinion from the European side, but also very much understand that this is a project of this region. That the countries of this region, the ones who are members and the ones who are not members, have to somehow succeed there. And why was there so much enthusiasm about the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue agreement, whatever? Because it was a success. And in that sense, the old saying that nothing succeeds like success is, I think, a very important key to the advancement of the countries of this region. We have to make ourselves into a success. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Vesna, you had your last word. Let's have all the other participants. Thank you.